How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from WeatherStorm 1000, and in this video we're going to focus on the Atlantic hurricane season and determine if this next tropical wave that's expected to come off the African coast by early next week will develop into Tropical Storm Danielle. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the GFS model, and we have seen a trend where now the GFS model and the European model are a little bit more lenient in bringing a tropical wave into the main developed region by next week, and with it comes with a lot of moisture, which does definitely raise a concern that this potentially could develop into Tropical Storm Danielle. So if I were to continue to move forward, taking a look at the the relative humidity forecast map from the GFS model, and of course, which hasn't been anything new over the past several days, we are seeing a high amount of stable and dry air throughout the northern Atlantic at this time, which has been preventing tropical cyclones from developing over the past few weeks. But that could potentially change into next week, because if I were to continue to move forward, we're going to see a tropical wave eventually come off the African coast. It won't be this tropical wave. It seems like there's going to be a little bit too much stable air for this patch of moisture to really have the potential of developing into tropical storm. But it's going to be a tropical wave after that, which is going to be a concern, because you see that with it comes a lot of moisture. We're seeing the darker greens, and you see that the dry air, while it certainly exists just to the north of this patch of moisture, you see that it's a lot less widespread, and you see that the stability is a lot less concentrated, which means that this does have a little bit of an opportunity to get its convection going, as long as it's able to stay away from the concentrated amount of dry air or the very concentrated areas where the Saharan dust layer is very strong at. So there's certainly that possibility that we could see it at least maintain its convection as it continues to move westward. And in fact, we do see a little bit more convection as this continues to head further westward, despite the existence of dry air to the north of it. So it suddenly does raise the potential that maybe a tropical storm could develop by next week. Of course, I'm going very far out, but you see that even within a window that's where the forecast is a little bit more certain, we do see a tropical wave come off the African coast, and with it is a lot of moisture. And if this forecast remains where there won't be a lot of dry air to the north of it, that definitely raises a potential that we could see Tropical Storm Danielle form potentially in the main development region. But there are certainly inhibiting factors that could prevent Tropical Storm Danielle from developing, because for one thing is that it's going to move fairly far south, which may be a problem, because if it moves south enough, then it could come uncomfortably close to the equatorial region, to where the Coriolis effect won't be as strong for enough rotation to really create a powerful low pressure system, or to create an area where all that air is converging towards and rotating around one center of circulation. So it needs to be a little bit further northward to really feel the effect of the Coriolis effect. So we could see a little bit more rotation and convergence around the center of circulation. And of course, while I did say that the dry air will be less concentrated by next week as this tropical wave moves westward, the dry air will still be there, and there's still a good possibility we maybe could see the GFS model shift its forecast where more dry air than usual is expected, or it could be the opposite, where less dry air than what we've been seeing is possible. We just have to wait and see, because of course around 6 days out a lot could change, which I hate to overuse the word uncertainty, but it's pretty much valid in this case, because of course we can't predict with high certainty between the next 6 to 7 days that we could see that dry air this amount of dry air around the main development region by this time. So it's something to keep in mind as well, how the dry air will maneuver itself over the next several days, because that'll be key in determining if this low has a possibility of developing into a tropical storm. And of course, we're going to need to pay close attention to the wind shear. However, the wind shear, based on what the GFS model is forecasting at this time, will be relatively light over where this low pressure system will develop, because while we do see a strong amount of wind shear just to the south of this tropical wave and just to the north as well, we do see that small area right around the main development region where the upper level winds are relatively weak. So this could have the chance to organize itself as it heads further westward. But of course, there's still uncertainty regarding that as well. Maybe we do see this upper level high move a little bit southward to where it'll feel more of the effects of the upper level winds associated with this upper level high, or we could see this wind shear further southward inhibit this storm if this storm were to move further southward. So still a high amount of uncertainty. Well, of course, we're going to need to pay close attention to the track of this, because it'll determine not only the amount of wind shear this tropical wave would experience, but it would also determine the amount of dry air that it would also determine how far north or south this storm will go. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So I'm still a high amount of uncertainty, but the European model at this time is also forecasting a tropical wave to come off the African coast by next week, which certainly does raise a concern that that the possibility of a tropical storm exists in the main development region. At this point, neither of them are necessarily developing a tropical storm, but they are bringing a tropical wave with a lot of moisture with it, which is of course always something to keep in mind. We see the pressure drop as low as 1,011 millibars, which may set the stage for a tropical storm to develop based on how low that pressure is. But of course, we're just going to need to wait and see how much dry air there will be to really determine if this does have a good chance of developing. And in terms of any other areas in the Atlantic, of course, we've been talking about the Caribbean as well, the southwestern Caribbean, where there's going to be a stream of moisture, a continuous stream of moisture moving into the southwestern Caribbean. But I did list several inhibiting factors that I think will make it unlikely we're going to see a tropical storm in the southwestern Caribbean likely anytime soon. And it's the fact that the wind shear is a little bit too strong. There is it's unlikely that this moisture will be over the Caribbean Sea for a long enough time period to really organize itself to really strengthen into tropical storm, and so it's going to deal with a lot of land interaction, which will also inhibit any sort of low pressure system from having a good possibility of developing into a tropical storm. So we're just going to need to wait and see how the conditions will play out over the next several days to really determine if a tropical storm does form in the southwestern Caribbean. But at this time, it's unlikely. And the main development region, we're just going to need to pay close attention to several factors. But I could say for certainty is that we will see a tropical wave move into the main development region by next week, and it's going to contain a lot of moisture, and it will likely be enough to fend off this dry air. But it really all depends how much it'll be able to fend off this dry air and wind shear, which still has yet to be seen. Now, taking a look at what the spaghetti models are stating at this time, this is over 144 hours from now, and you see that the GFS model ensemble members are developing low pressure system just south of the Cape Verde Islands at this time. And if I were to continue to move even forward, let's say to the 240-hour mark, we do see that these low pressure systems, while they aren't necessarily strong, we do see them reach the blues and the reds. I mean the greens when it comes to the wind speed. So there is that possibility that this low pressure system will be at least formidable enough to have the potential of developing into a tropical storm. But we're just going to have to wait and see with the other factors to really determine if that will be the case. Now, here's my forecast when it comes to the potential of Tropical Storm Danielle. Of course, the potential still exists in the southwestern Caribbean. I think it's unlikely, but it certainly exists with the amount of moisture moving into the Caribbean. And if Tropical Storm Danielle were to develop, it will move sort of in this vicinity, maybe a little bit further southward. and the GFS models and the GFS and the European model are both developing a tropical wave by next week. So that certainly does raise a concern that the possibility exists by next week. But I'll make sure to keep you guys updated once the forecast becomes more certain. But yeah, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.